Time for the day's top stories from our NTV newsroom.
May you not have peace, and vengeance is of the Lord. Na Mungu atatupigania.
Msando's widow cries out for justice at IEBC officials' requiem mass.
There were really grave head injuries. Had a bang on the back of the skull.
Autopsy reveals that 6-month-old baby Pendo died from severe head injury.
The registry usually will check that all the required documents are in order, the petition itself.
Countdown to the big Supreme Court battle as NASA rushes to beat tomorrow's deadline.
Mandera and Machako kick off swearing-in season for governors.
There, it's 9 o'clock. I'm Smriti Vidyarthi. Tonight, our sign language interpreter is David Agondoa.
I'm Masai. Tonight, our day's top story. May you not know peace. The widow of the late Chris Msando, Eva Buyu Msando, addressed her husband's killers directly in an emotional and powerful tribute.
Eva, who led her family and the nation in eulogizing her partner, friend, husband and father of their children at the Consolata Shrine in Nairobi, said the death of her husband would not be in vain as she cried for justice.
Leila Mohammed reports.
Final rites at the house of the Lord. The clergy blessing the body of Chris Msando at the Consolata Shrine. Eva Buyu Msando stood tall to honor a man who shared not only her hopes and dreams, but also was the rock that she leaned on for the many years in marriage. Eva boldly expressed her feelings with questions, perhaps in the hope that she will get answers soon.
I don't know what to tell you, because I have why? Are you happy? Because I know you're watching. May you not have peace, and vengeance is of the Lord.
The family of the late Chris Msando, his IEBC colleagues and Kenyans from all walks of life gathered for this mass. Questions over the sudden demise dominated. Many here openly expressed their feelings about the man who it appears was highly regarded.
An intelligent boy has been plucked rudely from the midst of us.
We as a family believe that Chris died because of his job.
Msando's son, Jacob Msando, who lives in Australia, had called for resolution of his murder in conversation with his aunt, Msando's sister. He had planned to visit his departed father in 2018.
Na Mungu atatupigania.
For those who walked out with the late Msando at the IEBC, it was a moment to remember his charisma and diligence in executing his duties and to condole with the family.
We pray that the police investigation concludes soon, and that we put a closure to this event that we all want. We don't understand what it is, but we want a closure to this event.
Leaders who gathered here calling for quick action to find his killers.
We must reflect and say it is time to change this political system for something else that will not once again circulate misery among us every 5 years.
For one last time, the late Msando was wheeled out of the church, his widow and children accompanying the body. They stood outside the church for a final blessing. The body will be airlifted to Kisumu on Friday. As the country prepares to lay to rest a dedicated servant, the people of Siaya, son, and for the family, a father, a friend, a husband, and their confidant, they say it will not be well with their souls until they find justice for the killers of Chris Msando, who they believe was murdered because of his job. Leila Mohammed, NTV, Nairobi.
Well, as the country condoles with the family, may justice be served. In another tragic story, Samantha Pendo, the 6-month-old infant who was clobbered by anti-riot policemen in Kisumu last week, died of internal bleeding, an autopsy result has shown.
The postmortem revealed that the baby sustained severe head injuries from the blow which led to her death. Okusa reports.
According to a consultant pathologist working with the government, Dickson Mchana, Pendo's death was caused by excessive bleeding resulting from a fractured scalp.
Gaping head fractures, and that's what kept the baby alive, because once the skull opened up, it relieves pressure, so you can survive. Otherwise, if it were closed, you would have died much earlier. But there were really grave head injuries. Had a bang on the back of the skull. Yes.
The infant died 2 days ago while undergoing treatment at the intensive care unit of Aga Khan Hospital here in Kisumu. The autopsy was conducted in the presence of officials from the Independent Policing and Oversight Authority, Pendo's family spokesman, the hospital's resident pathologist, and medical director.
We as a family want to ask for a lot of calm. We also want to explore this to the highest level possible in form of justice. It was very sad to see baby Pendo suffer for that much. As the doctors indicated, the damage was so grave, and that's just what we can say as per now.
Samantha Pendo was the youngest victim of post-election violence that rocked Kisumu town last Friday night. She was struck on the head by one of the policemen who stormed her parents' house in Nyalenda Estate following the protests. The death of baby Pendo has caused an uproar in the country, with police being accused of brutality and violation of human rights. Okusa, NTV.
Well, this evening, the Kisumu County Commissioner Mohammed Malim maintained that police will take responsibility of 6-month-old Samantha Pendo's death only if investigations reveal that they were culpable.
For now, he says the police are innocent. The questions don't end there. The family of the late Stephanie Mora, the 9-year-old girl who was shot while on the balcony of a house in Mathare Estate last week, wants the government to compensate them and especially aid with the funeral arrangements.
The family, speaking in Kisii County, wants answers to what still remains unresolved since the Saturday shooting. Senior government officials and police commanders have repeatedly insisted that she was killed by a stray bullet that might not have been fired by a police officer.
Less than a week ago, a 9-year-old girl in Mathare Estate in Nairobi would become the first known casualty of post-election protests that broke out shortly after the announcement of the contested presidential results. Over 300 kilometers away in Isecha-Tutuchache constituency in Kisii County, the family of the late Stephanie Mora Mokaya are feeling the absence. As investigations continue, the family is seeking not just answers, but help in laying Stephanie's body to rest.
Sasa pesa ndio zimekuwa ni zida sana, kuleta mwili kutoka Nairobi mpaka mahali hapa ni distance ndefu. Hatujui vile tutafanya mpaka mwili ufike hapo, lakini tuomba watu wetu penye mzima penye wako wakaweze kutusaidia ili mwili kaweze kufika hapa na at least roho zetu zikaweze kutulia hata kidogo.
The family has blamed the government for the death of their kin, requesting it covers all expenses.
Serikali ichatuambia lolote, isipokuwa wakati ripoti ilikuja hapa nyumbani ilisemekana ya kuwa mtoto amepigwa risasi, kumaanisha ya kwamba huyu mtoto aliuawa na serikali. Ombi letu ni la kwamba watusaidie.
Stephanie was killed by a stray bullet while playing with her friends on the third-floor balcony of her apartment during protests in Mathare last Saturday. Her demise has since spurred calls for swift investigations into the matter and justice for the family that is now grappling with a heavy cost of death. Victoria Rubadiri, NTV.
Once again, may justice be served. Elsewhere, NASA has until midnight tomorrow to file a petition challenging the presidential election results at the Supreme Court.
The filing will trigger a number of activities before the case is heard. Here's a roadmap to that Supreme decision that NASA Principal Raila Odinga will very much be banking on.
The country's top court, exhibiting the image of justice as idealized, dignified, and beyond reproach, is NASA leader Raila Odinga's last shot, and he has until midnight Friday to file his challenge of the results of last week Tuesday's election. The filing will trigger a cascade of activities.
The registry usually will check that all the required documents are in order. The petition itself, the verifying affidavits, the supporting affidavits, together with the documents that are supporting that claim. So all those have to be there. They have to also pay the court fees, a minimum of 1.5 million. The court fees is 500,000. The 1 million is really security for costs.
NASA will have 2 days to serve the respondents. They may do so directly or by an advert in a newspaper with a national coverage. They'll also need to serve the respondents electronically within 6 hours of filing the case.
After being served, the respondents have 4 days within which to file their responses. Of course, the petition comes with supporting affidavits with all the documents that the parties will be relying on in terms of supporting their respective cases. One of the things that has been introduced under the Supreme Court rules this time round is that after the 6th day, on the 7th day, the court will have an opportunity to deal with any interlocutory applications that might come in. And then on the 8th day, now the judges will have to retreat into a conference. And in the conference, some of the things they'll be able to determine is, for example, how much time should they give both parties to address the court within the time limits that they have, what kind of, just basically procedural issues in readiness for the hearing that begins immediately after the conference. So we anticipate that to be from the 9th day.
The 14-day period within which the petition should be heard and a decision made includes weekends. The court may uphold the election of President Kenyatta or declare it invalid and order fresh elections, which must be held within 60 days after the ruling. The bench may also, like it did in 2013, give its decision but reserve its reasons for that decision until later, but no later than 14 days. The NASA coalition says it will rely on what it has described as shamelessly cooked presidential results, some of them from non-existent polling stations and ungazetted presiding and returning officers, to make their case. The decision to lay this evidence before the world, NASA says, is to give the Supreme Court a second chance. The Supreme Court will be sitting for a second time over a similar matter, a familiar scene but from a new vantage point.
Politicians will always say what they have to say, but the judiciary is guided by the rule of law, it's guided by evidence of the law. Therefore, we will not be overly preoccupied by what's happening out there.
This is the 6th presidential election petition in the country's history and will perhaps be the most watched, as it offers NASA leader Raila Odinga's only chance at the presidency that he says has been stolen from him more than once. Sheila Sendeo, NTV, at the Supreme Court, Nairobi.
Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta has urged Kenyans to maintain peace and coexist as citizens of one nation.
He was speaking at the new Kenyatta Market, which was previously known as just Kenyatta Market.
He called on all Kenyans to continue with their daily business and let the Supreme Court take up the issue of determining the presidential election results.
He also said that whichever decision the court will make, he shall respect it.
The president was accompanied by Nairobi Governor-elect Mike Sonko, who on his part reminded the residents that he will fulfill his promises.
Vile rais amesema, wachaneni na sisi wanasiasa, wachani sisi tupigane kule juu. Sidara amempiga knockout na yule msamagira pia amepigwa knockout. Sasa hiyo ngeni nini? Tuwafanyia nyinyi kazi.
Jameni, mjue ya kwamba nyinyi ndio ndugu zenu. Hakuna ndugu. Hii soko ikichomeka haijochomekea kabila moja, sini zote. Nyinyi ndio mna ndugu majameni. Muishi kwa amani pamoja. na mupendane jameni. Wacha sisi tuzozane huko juu. Nyinyi hiyo ni yetu, sio yenu. Au namna gani jameni? Au namna gani? Waamuzi unajitokeza. Nyinyi muishi pamoja. Vile mnaishi kila siku pamoja. Si namna hiyo.
Can now take you to the venue of what will be considerable attention tomorrow. That is Supreme Court. Ken Mijungu is standing by to tell us what will be expected as NASA will be filing the petition. Ken?
Right, Mark, a lot of things are expected here tomorrow. First, to begin with the timeline that they have left. By midnight tomorrow night, they must have filed that petition. And before I talk about the procedure that will follow after that, I'd like just to point out that the bench this time around will be 7. However, 2 of the former justices have since exited and they will not be on this bench, and there are 2 who have been introduced. Now, the 2 who have been introduced is the CJ himself, David Maraga, and Justice Philomena Mwilu. They're coming in, and remember the other time it was Dr. Willy Udunga who was the CJ, and of course we've had Philip Tunoi, who has had to leave the judiciary and the Supreme Court for one reason or another. So let me talk about tomorrow. Now, by midnight tomorrow, Mark, they expect that NASA should have filed, and they have 2 days after tomorrow night of which to serve the respondent. Now, the last petition, that was the court petition, had Raila Odinga and 3 others, and 5 others, sorry, versus the IBC and 3 others. Now, the other people who were responding in the previous case were, apart from the IBC, President Uhuru Kenyatta, his deputy Lamruto, and the former chair of the IBC, Isaac Hassan. So they have until the 18th, which is on Sunday, to serve the respondents. Then the respondents have 4 days of which they have to respond to NASA's petition, which means within that 4 days, by 24th, they should have responded to NASA. So the procedure that was explained in Sheila Sendeo's story then takes over. Then they have from 25th to hear the case, and then by 1st of September, Mark, they must have ruled. They can listen to the case or hear the case in the least period possible between the 25th and 1st. But by 1st, they must have given a verdict. Now, there can only be 2 possibilities out of this case. Either the Supreme Court will uphold the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. If it happens, then it means President Uhuru Kenyatta will be sworn in by the 12th of September. The other scenario is if the Supreme Court says that this election was null and void, which means now the IBC has to how the ruling goes, Mark. So from tomorrow, we will be right here bringing you all the updates until the Supreme Court decides this case. We will be telling you also who exactly are involved in this case. We'll be defining the applicant. We already know that it's NASA, but we also know that there are interested parties who will be filing. We've had sentiments from Third Way Alliance, probably they'll want to be enjoined. And we'll also have the civil society. And we'll then have the respondents on the other side who will include the IBC and the president-elect and the deputy president-elect. And obviously the chair of the IBC can also be sued. Apart from that, we'll have several interested parties. We will also have the AG who would like to be a friend of the court. And you remember the last case had a lot of other people who are interested in this case. So from tomorrow, stay tuned. The venue is the Supreme Court of Kenya right here in the CBD, where we'll be giving you all the details of this presidential petition. Back to you, Mark and Smriti.
Thank you very much, Ken Mijungu. Quite elaborate there in the explanation of the timelines that we can expect. The focus will be there and we will be there too.
Of course, we certainly will be, especially tomorrow. Now, a coalition of civil society organizations in Kenya under the umbrella of Kura Yangu Sauti Yangu have called for an audit of the entire IEBC election results and the whole process leading to the announcement of the results.
The group says that the information received from over 500 people they tasked to monitor the elections in all constituencies paint a different picture from what the IEBC announced.
registered voters in 45 counties varied from what was announced on August the 11th, and it bears repeating that register already carries more than 1 million dead voters. So we should always remain alive to the fact that even after the cleanup exercise, the register did retain those that are referred to as dead voters. Hundreds of thousands of shared identity cards and illegitimate entries, as well as errors.
We found massive errors between the information from Forms 34A and B and the results calculations posted by the IEBC website.
At face value, they suggest a full audit of the results of the IEBC and their reconciliation with the authentic documents from the polling station. The amount of missing data a full week after the elections calls into question whether the declaration of the results could be made legitimately. We shall be involved in whatever petition that shall be before the Supreme Court. And I think it is of extreme importance, not only to the Kenyan people, but also to the judiciary itself and all other stakeholders, to see the pronouncements that the Supreme Court will have to make on some of these issues.
All right, 20 past the hour. You're watching NTV Tonight. Time for a breather, but much more coming up, including
the government to begin issuance of electronic passports in September. Benefit Organizations Act has the dubious distinction of not being enacted despite being signed into law nearly 5 years ago.
The act was supposed to reform the operations of NGOs and other civil society organizations, bringing them under one body and abolishing the NGO Coordination Board.
However, despite protests from the civil society and 2 court orders, the government has not operationalized the act, leaving the civil society in limbo.
Andrew Ochieng has the details.
When the Public Benefit Organizations Act was signed into law in January 14, 2013 by then-President Mwai Kibaki, there was no commencement date indicated. This means that it was up to the relevant minister or cabinet secretary to give a date when the new law should start operating.
The commencement date is normally left for the minister responsible to give that minister enough time to put the necessary infrastructure to implement that particular law, because you'll find that a law, when it's passed, there could be even some budgetary implication which is required to be made in order to implement it. Now, PBO Act was such kind of law.
The Grand Coalition government never did it, and the honours fell on the Jubilee administration, which was elected in March 2013. However, instead of gazetting a commencement date, Jubilee came up with the then controversial amendments that would have limited funding NGOs got from external donors. The amendments also attempted to control how NGOs would get that financial support. While the amendments were never passed, the law was also never operationalized. What has followed has been a series of campaigns by the civil society to have the law enacted and numerous sidesteps by the government. The first court order compelling the government to enact the law was given on the 31st of October 2016. Yet nothing happened. Instead, in December that year, the regulation of NGOs was moved from the Ministry of Devolution and Planning to the Ministry of Interior. When the civil society moved to court again, accusing the government of contempt, it defended itself, claiming that the orders given in October had been directed at the Ministry of Planning. The High Court in May this year dismissed that argument and ordered the Ministry of Interior to enact the law within 30 days. It is nearly 100 days since then, and still the ministry has not said a word.
This level of impunity at very high levels of government is appalling and gravely undermines the rule of law in this country. The rule of law requires that orders of court be respected and obeyed. Willful and flagrant disobedience of court orders undermines the authority and the dignity of the judiciary.
The court should frown at public officers who flagrantly just disobey it. And if the court really wants it to be respected, it is important that any person who is in contempt, they face the consequences.
Instead, there have been the actions of the NGO board led by Fazul Mohammed. The civil society say that his actions are illegal because his office doesn't exist under the new regime. The PBO Act abolishes the NGO's Coordination Board and establishes the Public Benefit Organizations Regulatory Authority, which is the new body supposed to manage all non-profit organizations. The Act also establishes the National Federation of Public Benefit Organizations and the Public Benefit Organizations Dispute Tribunal that is supposed to resolve disputes in the sector. The civil society said that the law was arrived at after a lot of input from all the key stakeholders and aligns the management of public benefit organizations to the 2010 Constitution. Why then would the government not want to enact it, despite the numerous court orders? They say it is probably because it has progressive provisions which the government may not be comfortable with.
The PBO Act takes away all those draconian provisions that were in the NGO Coordination Act, which allowed the executive officer, like Fazul now, to take the action that is purporting to take. Under the PBO Act, there is an elaborate procedure on how to ensure compliance by the public benefit organizations, on how, if there is lack of compliance, the procedure and steps of how to ensure that compliance is achieved.
Our attempts to get a response from the government today went unanswered. Andrew Ochieng, NTV.
Now, the Kenya presidential election petition, as we said, in 2017, of course, is set to begin on Monday at the Supreme Court. But this is not the first time that the petitioner, Raila Odinga, is going head-to-head with Uhuru Kenyatta.
That's right. The last time was in 2013. Trevor Mbija goes down memory lane to the 2013 Battle Royale, if we could call it that, at the highest court in the land.
Just like in 2013, this year's presidential election petition seeks to declare the re-election of President Uhuru Kenyatta invalid. In 2013, the main petitioner, Raila Odinga, noted that the election had been marred by massive and significant alleged failures of the biometric voter registration, BVR kits. There were 3 petitions filed in 2013. The first one sought to determine what constituted a rejected vote and whether rejected or spoilt votes should have been counted when determining the total number of votes cast. The second sought to invalidate the results of the election since there were numerous irregularities in the voter registration, electronic voter identification, and tallying. The third sought to invalidate the results, alleging massive electoral fraud that helped Uhuru Kenyatta to win. All the cases were consolidated and heard at the same time.
In proceeding to take us for a ride that we were going to vote using a biometric register, the second respondent was, and his officers were clearly breaching fundamental obligations which are imposed on them by the Constitution.
In an election under our new Constitution, the end cannot justify the means.
Well, the cases sought to demonstrate that constitutional and legal safeguards on the election process were so breached that the accuracy and legitimacy of the electoral outcomes was laid open to question. They also sought to demonstrate that the electoral process was neither accountable nor transparent, and its results therefore could not be verified. And the petitioners also sought to show that series of technical failures cast doubt on the provisional results as tallied by the IEBC, and that massive electoral fraud and malpractices occurred that helped Uhuru Kenyatta win.
We cannot equate free and fair election to the desires or the historic desires of one person, my lord.
Well, the ruling confirmed that the elections were indeed conducted in compliance with the Constitution and the law, and that Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto were validly elected, and also rejected votes ought not to have been included in calculating the final tally in favor of each presidential candidate. This time, the battle royale will be decided by a 7-judge bench led by the Chief Justice himself, David Maraga, and also the Deputy Chief Justice, Philomena Mwilu. That's not all. There is more. Justice Smokin Wanjala will also be part of that bench, and Justice Njoki Ndungu. And there's also Justice Jekton Ojwang, Justice Isaac Lenaola, and Justice Mohammed Ibrahim. The 7 will decide the fate of the presidential petition 2017.
Mandera Governor Ali Roba says his win now proves that the negotiated democracy concept by the community's elders is outdated.
Roba says his was a battle against the elders who had pushed him out of the equation and lined up their preferred candidates. Well, despite his victory, the Economic Freedom Party won the majority of the seats in the county.
Kennedy Mureithi reports that the governor believes his development record earned him a second term in office.
The colorful ceremony at the Moi Stadium in Mandera County marks the beginning of Governor Ali Roba's second term in office after fighting stiff competition from the Economic Freedom Party. 8,000 votes separated Ali Roba and his EFP competitor Nur Hassan Nur, gifting the incumbent another term, though the results have been contested. But even as he comfortably strides into his second term, the governor will have to find a way of working with the county assembly, which he has no control over.
Now that the election is over, I would like to advise all the leaders blessed by the Almighty Allah to win their seats, to understand they are no longer in competitive environment of election, but rather they are leaders who have a responsibility for the great people of Mandera County.
The elections gifted the Jubilee Party 10 MCAs against EFP's 17. NAK Kenya got 2 slots while ODM got 1.
In modern day Kenya and the world, nothing short of free and complete democracy is acceptable. The idea of rotating seats as if you are dishing out food is completely unacceptable. Any political theory that is not in use anywhere else in the world or Kenya cannot be applied only in Mandera.
There is talk on the ground that the county's former Senator Bill Okero is being fronted for the Speaker's position, and that could complicate matters for the county government, which has a minority in the House.
We underestimated our opponents and believed very strongly that we will win most of the seats. Our brothers put up very aggressive campaigns that have proven otherwise. I would like to congratulate them for their efforts. One thing is for sure, you have been worthy opponents.
Majority of the county's 6 constituencies are being controlled by EFP, with each taking 5 MP slots, including the women rep seat. Jubilee has 2 MPs. The win now provides new lessons for the elders who had fronted the idea of negotiated democracy, which locked out Roba and some of his team. The function also started late, with earlier reports of misunderstanding between the Devolution Ministry and the IEBC over the gazetting of governors. Likening the community's elders to the Stone Age period, the governor insists that some of the development projects started by his government were the key drivers to his re-election bid, insisting that the will of the residents could not be overridden by the community's elders, who represented the comments of a few. Kennedy Mureithi, NTV in Mandera County.
Machakos Governor Dr. Alfred Mutua fired a salvo at Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka, claiming that the NASA principal schemed to dethrone him because of his development record.
Speaking after being sworn in, the Maendeleo chapter party leader maintained that his re-election meant that the people of Ukambani were embracing the politics of change.
But as Enoch Sekolia reports from Machakos, Mutua appeared to be laying ground to dethrone Musyoka as the Kamba kingpin.
Dr. Alfred Mutua was sworn in for a second term at Kenyatta Stadium on Thursday. Having been declared the winner of the August 8th Machakos governorship race, he took oath of office, vowing to uphold the rule of law. Mutua promised to champion development.
Nitaenda nitafute lami. Niliwaambia wakati wa campaign nitaenda kule Dubai, mahali nilikuwa nafanya kazi. Nitaenda Abu Dhabi, nitaenda Saudi Arabia. Nitawaangalia hao Waarabu wenye lami kwa macho, niwaongeleshe lugha yao, niwasalimie, niwaambie salamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, kafalak marhaba.
As Dr. Mutua was pledging to foster development in Machakos County, NTV spoke to residents who laid bare their expectations.
Kama barabara hivi ajenge, aeke lami, zenye hazina lami.
You know, he's doing his work. He has done a lot for the county Machakos, and we are hoping to see way forward how we can do some good business with him.
Governor Alfred Mutua trounced former Kathiani MP Wavinya Ndeti of Wiper in what was seen as a titanic battle. Mutua garnered 238,000 votes against Wavinya's 199,000 votes.
Waliniulitaka kuningoa eti kwa sababu nimefanya maendeleo ambayo hayajaonekana katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Walitaka kuningoa eti kwa sababu ati ninaharibu siasa. Ati nafanya maendeleo, naharibu siasa. Hata kuna mmoja aliniita akaniuliza, Mutua, mbona unaniaibisha? Nikamuuliza na kuaibisha namna gani?
Ahead of the August elections, the contest between Mutua and Wavinya Ndeti intensified, with NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga and his running mate Kalonzo Musyoka touring Machakos County on several occasions to drum up support for the former Kathiani legislator.
And God has made his choice very clear. And he has decided that the people of Machakos will get development, not sycophancy.
You can count on my support on whatever level.
Mutua's ally in the battle was President Uhuru Kenyatta, who endorsed the former government spokesman for re-election.
Now, the re-election of Dr. Alfred Mutua has taken the battle for Ukambani region to another level. Alfred Mutua today firing at Kalonzo Musyoka.
Wewe uko na gari kubwa, ikipiga bump haisikii. Hii barabara tunajengea vijana wetu wa bodaboda. Tunajengea wazee wetu waache kula vumbi. tukaona ya kwamba wakasema lazima Mutua wamchimbie chini.
Wavinya Ndeti says she will be challenging the election of Dr. Mutua in court, but Mutua has extended an olive branch.
We know she was just a pawn in a larger game of chess. She's still my sister. Na nakuomba njoo tufanye kazi pamoja. Hapa kuna kazi nyingi. Njoo tufanye kazi pamoja.
Enoch Sikolia, NTV.
We'll take a break now. Dan Wangi will be ready to talk business with you in a bit.
Good evening and welcome to NTV Business. I'm Dan Mwangi. Now, the uncertainty over if there will be a minimum wage increase announcement during Labour Days and by how much is likely to come to an end. The Ministry of Labour has hinted at a new wages and remuneration policy that is to guide on compensation of workers as well as reduce industrial actions. Laban Cliff Ontario reports on the possible future of pay dynamics that governments have used in the past to gain political mileage.
We need a pay rise. Do the workers of Africa need a pay rise?
It is a call that is not new around labour movement circles. This includes calls for decent work and a conducive working environment.
And if our politicians won't pay that percentage of GDP on a social protection floor from the taxpayers' money that they actually collect, then something is very wrong, and we have to break the corporate capture of governments.
So much so that Labour Day celebrations have now largely been about whether the government will increase or lower minimum wage. Employers have consistently argued that pay and any increase on it must be commensurate to productivity and economic output.
If you are poorly remunerated, how do you supplement your productivity at your place of work? So it is only opportune that any employer who wants to maximize his profits and make whatever he wants to make, though me I'm opposed to this issue of where people say we want to make money.
The productivity question often comes hand in hand with the issue of minimum wage being less than living wage, leaving workers still earning less than they live off, yet some feel underpaid.
I have believed time and again that money is not made. People work for money and earn money.
It is such conversations and the underlying issues that have led the government to work on putting together a new wage and remuneration policy which will guide wage management in a structured format.
Is it necessary to have minimum wages? What is it that we need to do? But the issue is we need to have a benchmark that will create an opportunity for us to sit and discuss and say, hey, look here, we can now negotiate from this benchmark moving forward so that we take our workers out of poverty.
This policy is expected to increase dialogue and help tame strikes over pay, such as has been witnessed in the recent past. The officials were speaking at the ongoing Wage Flow Forum with the participation of the government, the Central Organization of Trade Union, that's COTU, and the International Trade Union Confederation, that's ITUC.
We will win decent minimum living wages. Solidarity.
Laban Cliff-Onserio, NTV Business.
Trade at the Kenya-Uganda border crossing at Swam is expected to increase significantly once the construction of the highway from Kitale to the border is complete. The Kenya National Highways Authority has inked a deal with the China State Construction Engineering Corporation to build the 45-kilometer stretch of road. Here's Alex Mwangi with the finer details of the deal.
The Swam border crossing between Kenya and Uganda is located further north of the border towns of Busia and Malaba. The lack of a highway to access the border on either side has impeded growth of the volume of trade at Swam. That is all set to change with the construction of a highway from Kenya to Uganda.
It is a multinational road, which actually starts in Kapchurwa in Uganda and ends up at Kitale in Kenya, meaning that funding for the project in entirety has already been provided by ADB and the two governments, the government of Kenya and the government of Uganda.
This corridor will open and make it easy to communicate between Kenya and Uganda. And when communication to Uganda is easy, then you know even DRC and the South Sudan are beneficiaries of this.
The 45-kilometer section from Kitale to Swam via Endebess will be built at a cost of 4.5 billion shillings with the support of the African Development Bank.
In addition to doing the road, we are also doing the one-stop border post to facilitate movement at the border posts.
The distance from Swam to Kapchorua, where the highway will terminate, is approximately 92 kilometers, with the Ugandan government set to build the section under the same project as Kenya's, with funding support also from the AFDB. According to Kenha, by the time the project is complete, it is expected to have engaged and trained between 800 and 1,000 Kenyans.
Government again has rolled out programs for 40% content. We expect the contractor to ensure that this policy is implemented by engaging local business people.
Uganda is Kenya's largest trading partner. The construction of the highway is expected to take 2.5 years. Alex Mwangi, NTV.
Now, coming from roads, let's talk about crossing borders. And you will only be able to use your existing dark blue Kenyan passport for the next 2 years. And here's why. Some of the details. Beginning the 1st of September, which is in 2 weeks, by the way, we are going to be having the government stopping issuing of current generation passports. Now, the government is also on that date going to begin issuing electronic passports or e-passports or biometric passports, if you like. Now, aside from that, the new passports are going to have various features on them and the purpose for which they are being made. So first and foremost, look at some of the features and purposes. We have there are going to be light blue booklets with an embedded chip. Now, this light blue is representative of the East African community, and this is the Kenyan version, the light blue ones. They'll have an embedded chip in them. Now, biometric symbol at the bottom of the cover, right at the bottom where it's written passport, if you could see in that small picture, there is a small logo which is internationally used, showing that it's biometrics. Now, this is seeking to curb forgery, which has been rampant according to the Immigration Department, and it helps to ease clearance at international airports. Now, the chip holds the same information printed printed on the passport's data page. You see the page usually has all your details. This is what is going to be in the chip as well. Now going on, it means that we are going to be having phasing out of some of these passports. Now the first one, which is like I said is the dark blue one, is the Kenyan passport is going to be phased out, as well as the EAC passports, as well as the individual passports issued to Tanzania, Uganda and Rwanda. Those are going to be phased out, so within the next 2 years this should be out of circulation. Now many people have been asking, especially on social media, how do we get it, what is the process, and what does it take for me to get this? So the process of how to get it. First and foremost, you apply through the government portal ecitizen.go.ke. Then you're also meant to appear in person for a photograph and fingerprints to be captured. Now, those who are abroad can get the same at the Kenyan embassy, wherever you are. And the processing duration of 10 working days remains the same, and so as do the requirements for getting a passport remain the same. Now, existing applications to have all passports will be issued. That is, if you've already applied for a passport before this deadline had passed, you're still going to be given the dark blue one, which then again would fall redundant when 2 years are passed. Now, moving on to other stories, let's take a look at this tweet by the President of the United States of America, now Donald Trump. And he says that Amazon is doing great damage to tax-paying retailers. Now, Amazon is an e-commerce company. Now, towns and cities and states throughout the U.S. are being hurt. Many jobs are being lost. Now, with this one tweet on Wednesday morning U.S. time, Amazon's share price almost immediately started falling and the company's value dropped by about $6 billion in a matter of minutes. Now, this is a loss of value of about 620 billion Kenyan shillings. Now, let's contextualize this for a bit. 620 billion shillings could be half of what KRA collected in 2016-2017. 620 billion shillings, which is what was lost in a few minutes by Amazon, is 13 times Safaricom's net profit for 2016, considering Safaricom is the most profitable company in the country. And it's almost 2 times of county's revenue share for 2017-2018. So whatever the amount the national government was dispensing to the county governments, 2 times of this almost fits into this value. What it also is, in terms of breaking it down, is about twice the standard gauge railways cost, 327 billion shillings, and this is close to twice that amount. And it's almost twice as well the amount of that the aviation industry contributed to Kenya's economy. So when you think about 5.1% of the GDP came from the aviation industry, and it's about the same amount of money that Amazon lost just because of that single tweet. And finally, in our examples, in our breakdown, it's 5.5 times the loans Kenya has taken from China, considering China is a single country who we owe the most money. We've taken the largest loans from in the world as Kenya. And so this, in a much smaller scale, shows why many corporates are investing in social media visibility, use of online influencers, as well as paying to ensure their firms' reputations are not dented. This is more of a concern in these days of, as Trump would put it, fake news and influential people online who are sometimes guns for hire. That's it for business. Dan Mwangi is my name. I'm told we still have one more story. I apologize for that. We shall be moving on to some corporate news. I beg your pardon. 2017 has proven to be a tough year for the Kenyan economy, as sectors such as tourism and finance were hard hit by the uncertainty over the general election and the tough environment. This is evident from a number of listed firms that have so far released their half-year financial results, ranging from greater losses to reduced profits. Now, looking at some of them, for instance, the first one is TPS or Serena, which has a loss after tax of 57.6 billion shillings, coming from 188.8 million shillings, which is rather it has come to 188, which is a deeper loss. The sales have gone down from 2.66 billion to 2.62 billion shillings in 2017, and this is the half-year results. Now, still on TPS or Serena, we have the loss after tax. The cause of this is slow tourism growth due to Kenyan elections, upgrading of Nairobi Serena, and one-off costs for termination of contract and season staff. Now, another corporate is Cooperative Bank, which has reported a profit after tax of 6.64 billion, coming from 7.41 last year at the same period. And another figure we look at is the customer deposits. That was 278.3 billion in 2016, and it's up to 285.8 billion in this half year. Now, still on the same bank, we have the net interest income, which is significantly impacted by the interest rates, and this is 14.46 billion last year, and it has come down to 13.42 billion, which shows the impact of the interest rates being limited as by law. Now we have the net loans and advances. In 2016, they were 221.3 billion, and in 2017, they've gone up to 252.6 billion worth of the same. Now, Cooperative Bank had a drop in performance owing to, according to them, capping of interest rates, general economic slowdown being an economic election year rather, and the South Sudan currency devaluation and hyperinflation. Now, looking at another corporate, we have the results which have also been sent in are for Housing Finance, which was known as HFCK. Now, Housing Finance also had a drop in its performance owing to the interest rates as well, which we shall get to. And the profit after tax in 2016 was 612.56 million, and it's now 159.01 million, over 70% drop in its profitability. This is after tax. Now, also on the same company, we have the loans and advances in 2016 were 53.47 billion, and there were less loans and advances at 52.77 billion shillings worth of the same. Net interest income in 2016 was 2.09 billion and has gone down to 1.56 billion owing to the same reasons that many of the financial institutions have been saying are affecting. And the customer deposits are 39.7 billion shillings. That was in 2016 and have gone down to 37.6 billion in 2017's first half. And the reasons that they've attributed these drops in results are: one, capping of interest rates and unfavorable macroeconomic environment. So this time it really is the end. I'm done. Good night.
This is fiber with no buffering and no downtime. Only fiber can.
Back. Volunteers in Mombasa have started removing campaign posters from the streets in a bid to make the coastal city attractive so that it can continue drawing tourists.
The exercise was launched at the iconic elephant tusks along Moi Avenue, which had been defaced by many of the posters.
Well, organisers, however, promised to paint the attraction once the cleanup is complete. Freelance photographers say that they've been losing business since no one wants to take pictures with such a background.
The initiative started in the town's central business district and will be extended to the city's outskirts, which have become an eyesore.
Well, the Mombasa Cement says it has hired 50 youth for the one-month exercise as part of the company's corporate social responsibility.
Tulikuwa katika hali ya kupata wateja, tulikuwa tupata shida pia kwa sababu wateja wengine wakikuja wanaona kama mapembe ni chafu, imepakwa hizo makaratasi, wanakataa kazi, watupei pesa. Sasa kwa sasa hii tumefurahi kwa sababu sasa kama inasafishwa hivi tunaweza kupata wateja, tunaweza kupata pesa.
Okay, tumekuja kungarisha Mombasa. Okay. Sisi haja yetu ni Mombasa ingare, wageni waanze kukuja. Okay, na sote ni Wakenya, tufanye kazi pamoja, tusaidiane, Mombasa ibadilike kabisa.
But I'm sure those are so easy to put up, but a nightmare to bring down.
But a worthwhile nightmare for all the counties. Definitely people want to have their cities cleaned.
That is right. All right, from that note, let us shift focus. The sports news is coming up next with Watson. Stay with us.
Welcome to NTV Sport. I'm Watson Karuma. Now, the International Olympic Committee has ordered the National Olympic Committee of Kenya to call for the resumption of the elective General Assembly not later than September, now that the High Court has discharged the orders issued in May barring the Assembly. IOC says that the Assembly will simply be the continuation of the meeting initially scheduled for the 5th of May 2017 and shall resume and conclude in the same conditions as when it was adjourned. This means that the Center for Multi-Party Democracy will still be responsible for conducting and monitoring the election process, and the list of candidates for various positions remains the same. In the meantime, NOC has called an executive committee meeting at their headquarters on Friday to pick a date and venue for the elective assembly. Now, the Independent Disciplinary and Complaints Committee has awarded Zukericho the match against Tusker FC, in which the KPL champions were found to have fielded players without valid Football Kenya Federation cards. Tusker was charged before the IDCC for failing to produce valid FKF cards for their 18 players during a league match held on the 10th of May at the Kericho Green Stadium against Zukericho. Tusker won the match 2-0. Zukericho have therefore been awarded the 3 points on a 2-0 basis. Tusker now dropped from 3rd to 7th on 29 points, and Zoo move up to 10th on 26. Meanwhile, Muhoroni Youth Chairman Moses Adagala has been banned from attending KPL matches for 120 days as a result of violent scenes experienced at the Muhoroni Stadium during a KPL match between Muhoroni and Sony Sugar. The other ruling saw Kariobangi Sharks Pascal Ogweno suspended for the next 6 matches for gross misconduct during a league match against Posta Rangers on the 22nd of April at the Afraha Stadium. The national under-19 cricket team has been drawn in a tough group